Hello everyone. This is the 14th part of the story, Magical Journey in Harry Potter World. Chapter 53, Cipher, Decoding, and Descent. The Room of Requirements has always provided its user with what they desired. Today, too, the person who called out to the room got what they sought from the magical room. On a very long table sat long strips of paper with symbols written on them in black ink. There were hundreds of these strips. Each long strip of paper representing a plank of symbols that Quinn copied from the Room of Rewards. He arranged them in the order of time. The plank which held the oldest binders went first, followed by the planks which had binders that came after them. This arrangement was the one that made the most sense to Quinn because he did not know what the symbols meant. They weren't alphabets from any traditional language that Quinn knew. The symbols were made from figures with angles, triangles, with at most one dot per symbol. This is a cipher, was the conclusion that Quinn came up with. The symbols weren't random, and Quinn could see the pattern and repetition in the symbols. There are 25 distinct symbols. One less than the English alphabet? Is there a missing letter in the code? Noted Quinn, his hand holding his chin in thought. Within a blink of his eyes, 25 symbols in red appeared in front of Quinn, floating in mid-air. These were all the unique symbols present in the cipher. Using illusions instead of writing the symbols down was redundant, as Quinn needed to maintain his magic while focusing on deciphering the cipher, but he did it for a reason. Last year, Quinn had noticed that he was spending too much time in the icy vault. He did nothing but try to get into the vault and spent a lot of time doing it. The time that could have been better managed by him to focus on other areas of magic. So to avoid that problem this year, Quinn had decided that while he focused on the vault, he was going to make sure not to let his other magical studies fall behind. Practicing illusion magic was just one example of Quinn making sure that he didn't spend all of his time on the vault. Quinn stared at the 25 symbols for a while before deciding the next step of action. Alright, let's apply the usual substitution cipher techniques. He clapped his hand and rubbed them rapidly as he roamed his eyes over the multiple strips of paper and symbol. Quinn judged the cipher as a substitution cipher. A substitution cipher was a way to encrypt data by replacing the plaintext with ciphertext. In Quinn's case, the ciphertext were symbols, but they could be anything from letters, numbers, arcane symbols, lines, and dots, or weird alien squiggles. For example, Caesar cipher was a way to encrypt information using substitution. The key to the Caesar cipher was to involve a simple shift to the alphabet. The following represents a Caesar cipher with a shift of 3 places. Plain text, A B C D E F G H I J K L M N O P Q R S T U V W X Y Z. Ciphertext, X Y Z A B C D E F G H I J K L M N O P Q R S T U V W. In the above example, up was ciphered by shifting 3 places to the left and getting by, so when you wanted to write a in your ciphered text, you would write it as by. And thus began long hours of rational and logical reasoning and study of ciphertext. Quinn was not experienced with ciphers and was the first time he was working on something like this. It took days over days of grind to work on the ciphered text that might give him the vault's location. While working on the ciphertext, Quinn learned a lot about substitution ciphers and how to decipher this type of cipher. There were techniques, tips, and methods that went into decoding substitution ciphers. The first step to solving a substitution cipher was to look for single-letter words because they were almost definitely a or I. By having a guess on the singular-lettered words, Quinn could have a solid estimate on 2 letters. Another technique was to count the frequency of the cipher symbols that appeared in the text. In the English language, or more specifically, an English text, some letters appeared more than others. According to the statistics, E, T, A, O, I, N, S, H, R, D, L, U were the most appearing letters, with E appearing the most and the frequency decreasing as we moved on to the right. A technique that might have worked was to look for apostrophes as T, D, M, L, L, or RE typically followed them. But there were no apostrophes in the text, so that went out of the window. This did make Quinn realize contractions like can't were written in their expanded form of cannot. From here on out, things got tough as Quinn had to search for repeating letter patterns. They were common repeating letter groups such as TH, SH, RE, CH, TR, ING, ION, and ENT. With time, he started on trying to decipher 2-, 3-, and 4-letter words. 2-letter words almost always had one vowel and one consonant. The 5 most common 2-letter words, in order of frequency, were OF, TO, IN, IS, and IT. The 5 most common 3-letter words, in order of frequency, were THE, and 4 was, and his. The most common 4-letter word was that. An encrypted term with the pattern #_## was likely to be that. However, the pattern #_## also represented 30 other words, so Quinn had a lot of combinations to work on. Quinn also scanned for double letters. They are most likely to be LL, followed in frequency by EE, SS, OO, and TT. Decrypting a cipher with hand took time, but slowly and surely, Quinn began making increasingly accurate guesses. Typical word fragments start to reveal themselves, though Quinn had to start over quite a few times because he guessed wrong. Quinn sat in the history of magic class, his head resting on his palm. Professor Cuthbert Binns droned about various goblin rebellions and giant wars to bored, sleeping students. The ghosts' lessons were regarded as some of the most boring at Hogwarts, leading many students to not paying attention in his classes. The reason Quinn didn't listen in Binns' lecture was that the ghost spoke in straight facts. Those facts were all stated in the books, and Quinn felt that reading the Hogwarts text was sufficient for the history of magic classroom. Plus, Quinn knew more about the history of magic because he had read about said history from the perspective of various communities. He was playing with his pen, his mind lost in thought about the cipher. He had hit a bit of a snag with his decoding of the cipher text. There were only 25 symbols in the cipher, but Quinn's initial assumption that the plaintext was in English, and there were 26 letters in the English alphabet. Quinn knew the plaintext was in English because he had been getting solid results in the form of proper words and coherent sentences, but there were sizable gaps in the text where Quinn couldn't make sense of the terms. The legible parts and paragraphs didn't help Quinn to the vault's location or its content. From what Quinn had deciphered, the text was religious sermons from a group known as the Order of Solomon's Temple. He felt a shake from his side and snapped out of his thought to look at the side. "Yeah, what is it?" he asked, looking at Marcus, who sat to his right side. "You should seriously join Muggle Studies. Professor Potter is genuinely fun. Her class is on its way to becoming my favorite," whispered Marcus. "If you ask Professor Flitwick, he might allow you to add another subject to your schedule." "I am not joining. I already all too much on my plate," Quinn whispered back. He had no interest in joining the Muggle Studies, no matter how fun Lily Potter's classes were. "Really?" He smiled and continued, "Let me tell you something fun that Professor Potter told us in her class today. Maybe that will motivate you to join the class." Quinn gave him a "go on," chin jut, and Marcus began. "Did you know scribes used interchangeably I and J to express the sound of both the vowel and the consonant? It wasn't until 1524 when John Giorgio Trissino, an Italian Renaissance grammarian known as the father of the letter J, distinguished between the two sounds by creating the letter J." Quinn's eye almost popped out from their sockets when he heard the juicy piece of information from Marcus's mouth. J didn't exist, he thought. Holy shit, this makes so much sense. There were only 25 before J, of course, now it all fits together. Quinn stilled for a second before another thought occurred to him. He looked at his hands and thought, maybe I have plot armor, because this timing was definitely plot armor, plot armor tilde. He turned to Marcus and hugged the dude. "Belby, you magnificent ball of sunshine. If you have any problem, come to me. I will fix it for you free of cost. Next time someone calls you something mean, holler me, and I will beat the crap out of them." "Okay," responded Marcus. He felt weirded out because he saw Quinn's eyes pop out before he looked at his hands and chuckled strangely. Not to mention he wasn't expecting the hug from Quinn. He untangled himself from Quinn before beaming, "Then will you join Muggle Studies?" "Huh, no way. Why would I do that?" said Quinn, as he swung his legs under the desk. "How about you join Care of Magical Creature?" Marcus made a face. No way. Those creatures are gross." "Yeah, but it is fun when you get to look at others squeak in fear or groan when touching something that you eloquently called as gross," laughed Quinn. "Yeah, that is always so much fun tilde. "You are weird," was Marcus' to-the-point reaction. After Marcus told Quinn that J didn't exist before, Quinn ran to the room of requirements and entered the room. Inside, he unpacked a regular-sized version of the entire ciphertext and applied J and I to the text, and finally, he had the full deciphered text that Quinn thought was the correct interpretation. "Yes. Let's do this," said Quinn, and red English lettering floated from the paper. Illusion magic did its job as the English plaintext of the ciphertext floated just above the page. The deciphered full text was from the Order of Solomon's Temple sermons about religion, and just as he expected, there was nothing about the vault in the text. He pounded on the table and yelled, "What in the world is this? Are you telling me that all of this was for nothing?" The illusion of the deciphered text flickered away because of the bout of anger. Quinn angrily paced in the room before stomping his way to the table with the text. "No, there must be something in here. I just have to look closer." Taking a deep breath, Quinn focused all his attention on the deciphered cipher that reappeared as an illusion. His eyes roamed all over the English text, looking for anything that would stand out. "Maybe there is something hidden in here," mumbled Quinn. He hunched over the table, and with his hands supporting his body, he concentrated, and seemingly random words turned from red to blue. The blue words would string together to form sentences before going back, and another set of words would turn blue and form another sentence. The process repeated repeatedly, the speed of formation of blue sentences sped up, and the words flashed faster with Quinn's pupils moving over every word. Then there was a sharp intake of air before Quinn stood straight as another set of blue words floated above the red words before the red words disappeared like sand in the wind, leaving behind a string of blue words. Under the seal, the antechamber of sin would be revealed. The first words of the lines in the Fibonacci sequence, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. 1. Under. 2. The. 3. Seal. 5. The. 8. Antechamber. 13. Of. 21. Sin. 34. Wood. 55. B. 89. Revealed. "I know what to do," said Quinn. His stone-grey eyes glowed as he stared at those words. Quinn immediately moved. He wanted to see the results of his work. Quinn walked to the portrait Vindictus and looked at the man in the painting. Vindictus Viridian stared at Quinn from his painting and noticed the smug child was here again. "Password?" he asked like he usually did. "Insalubili Muro," came the immediate reply. The immediate answer surprised the portrait and, finally, noticed that the child wasn't smiling his smug smirk. Today, the child was serious. A determined and focused look on his face as he stared forward. Portrait Vindictus opened the door to the room of reward, and the child marched inside, not giving him a second look. Inside the room of rewards, Quinn walked straight to the center of the room. "This is the seal, isn't it?" Quinn said as he squatted on the floor and touched the Hogwarts seal on the floor of the room of rewards. An H in the middle with a lion, badger, eagle, and snake around it. Quinn traced his finger on the motto of the school. Draco dormiens nunquam titilandus. "Never tickle a sleeping dragon," he muttered before pumping magic into the seal. When Quinn had first checked the room, he had investigated the entire room for any extrinsic charms or wards, but nothing popped out, which meant that either there was nothing in the room, or the charms and wards were hidden beyond Quinn's capabilities. Now, if he had deciphered the ciphertext correctly and was right about the Fibonacci sequence, then this seal should react to his magic. Quinn could feel his magic being absorbed into the Hogwarts seal, but there was nothing triggered. His eyes caught the Hogwarts motto and took a chance. Aprio. It was Latin for open, reveal, uncover, and in this case, unseal. There was a slight rumble as Quinn noticed that every word on the seal changed into the cipher symbols, showing that he was correct about his interpretation of the cipher. The faint rumble stopped, and the circular seal disappeared into thin air, leaving behind a dark opening on the floor. No chilling cold. "Always a good sign," spoke Quinn as he stared inside the pitch-black darkness. He raised his hand over the opening as an orb of light appeared in his hand. Quinn uncurled his hand and let the orb of light fall into the opening. He craned his neck and watched as the light illuminated a long circular tunnel going deep below the room. The orb finally contacted the ground, and Quinn judged it was around 20 feet deep. "All right, that is pretty doable," nodded Quinn as he stood up and looked near the entrance for a metallic disc to conjure into existence. The metal disc moved to the top of the opening before Quinn stepped onto the disc. Beginning descent, Quinn spoke to himself. The disc started to sink with Quinn standing upon it. He took a deep breath when his body sank into the opening, and he could no longer see the shelves. Slowly, the disc traveled down, Quinn making sure that there was no incident on his way down. Finally, Quinn exited the tunnel and was inside the antechamber, or as he thought, the vault. He didn't step down from the disc and focused his magic, and instantly 20-something white orbs of light illuminated into life. He waved his hand, sending them in every direction. The orbs reached the ends of the room, revealing a sizable room, the same size as that of an average Hogwarts classroom, which could comfortably hold 40-50 people with plenty of space for every occupant. The problem was that the room was bare. There was nothing in the room, and the floor, ceiling, and walls were also plain with nothing to look at. Did someone already cleared out this one, was Quinn's thought. Maybe someone found this vault without getting to know about it from the ghosts. Quinn sighed as he stepped down from the disc as it disappeared behind him. He walked around the room, his fingers gliding over the smooth walls. Quinn sent his magic into the walls, but nothing happened. The walls didn't absorb his magic or show any changes. Man, this one is really weird. Maybe I should go ask Friar for another centiliter. Thud. In the plane room, Quinn collapsed without any warning. With him fainting, the orbs of light around the room extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. The opening tunnel was the only source of faint light. For a moment, there was no movement in the antechamber. Then the smooth walls of the heptagonal antechamber transformed to show 7 rune circles, one on each wall. Each one glowed in a different light: violet, green, orange, blue, yellow, pink, and red. The centers of the 7 individual runic circles brightly glowed before they shot 7 sharp beams towards Quinn, covering his body in a harsh array of mixed light. The process was swift, with the beams only appearing for less than a minute before everything in the room returned to normal, leaving behind the unconscious body of Quinn West. Chapter 54, Unknown, and Commentary. The feeling of the side of his face squished against the cold and dusty floor was not the feeling you wanted when waking up, but it was the one that Quinn felt when he groggily opened his eyes. He coughed, dislocating the dust and at the same time inhaling said dust into his mouth. Quinn immediately sat up but felt a dizzy spell hit him. His ears rang with a continuous buzzing, and the world around him was unstable and out of focus. The thought of conjuring a mouthful of water to clean his mouth was out of his mind as he struggled to properly assess his situation. The ringing in his ears and the blurry vision didn't help as Quinn tried to stand up, almost falling back to the floor in his effort. When he stood up, Quinn wavered to his sides, like a drunk with alcohol impairing his balance. Quinn grabbed his head because a headache assaulted him, making the ringing in his ears much more annoying. All the volatility in his body finally caught up to Quinn, and he stumbled forward, falling to the ground, his hands and forearm supporting his body from making complete contact with the floor. He cried out a mighty groan of pain as he turned to lay down on his back. Coincidentally, all his wobbling trying to walk caused him to fall just under the tunnel to this room, the sole source of dim light that fell from the room of rewards above. Under the circle of light, Quinn's chest moved up and down as he stared at the light. Slowly, his mental faculties returned to him, the ringing in his ears subsided, and the world returned to focus. The fading headache finally allowed Quinn to think where he was. "The second vault," croaked Quinn, his voice cracking because of a dried-out throat. Quinn couldn't recall anything about how he had fallen unconscious. All he could remember was walking in the room, and then he woke up with a nasty case of disorientation. The time between was just like sleep. I was so careful this time, thought Quinn, he hadn't taken any hasty steps while exploring the vault. He didn't even dare to step off the metal disc before he was sure that there was no trap in the chamber. But it still happened, damn it, it still happened. Quinn laughed derisively. His light chuckles amplified in the quiet room before falling back into the consuming silence. Closing his eyes, Quinn decided to check the condition of his body. Several healing-grade diagnostic charms flowed through his body, giving back their result to Quinn. He couldn't find anything wrong with his body except a concussion. He guessed he hit his head on the floor on his fall. Nothing Madame Pomfrey can't fix, groaned Quinn. What time is it? Quinn took out his pocket watch from his robes and saw that there was only an hour before the curfew. He never stayed in the room of rewards after curfew because Portrait Vindictus was an ex-headmaster, and Quinn didn't want the portrait to snitch on him being out after curfew. Quinn sat up from his laying position and sighed, time to get out of here. He pulled himself up to his feet and looked behind him at the dark vault chamber, before raising both his hands to shoot out cords of light of the Seize Pull spell. A cord each shot out of Quinn's hands and attached themselves to the tunnel near its entrance. With a sigh, the spell pulled him up the tunnel. When he got out, Quinn saw the Hogwarts seal reappear on the place, hiding the tunnel, returning the room to its usual appearance, leaving no clue that there was a tunnel underneath the floor. Quinn vanished the dust on his clothes and walked to the exit. He pushed the door open and stepped out to nod a greeting towards Portrait Vindictus, but said nothing and directly left. He made his way to the hospital wing, walking carefully as he still didn't have complete control over his coordination and felt a little nauseous. Madame Pomfrey, called out Quinn, plopping his butt down on one of the chairs, rubbing his temple to alleviate the headache that had returned. The matron turned towards the voice to see Quinn sitting in a chair and was about to turn him away because it was already late, but then she saw the pale look on Quinn, with him showing a pained expression. She switched to her healer mode and hurried to the patient. What happened to you? She pulled out her wand and started to cast spells on Quinn, getting a full diagnostics. I think it is a concussion, responded Quinn. He said nothing else as Poppy Pomfrey was a professional, and he didn't need to tell about the spells he cast on himself. She just casted more spells than I casted, so she probably already knows. The matron finally stated her diagnostic results. You have a concussion, and your magic core is surprisingly drained. What were you doing? She walked away, and when she came back, she had a potion vial in her hand. Down this, ordered the matron, putting the vial in Quinn's face. He took it without a complaint and gulped the awful-tasting potion in a single gulp. Yuck, said Quinn, sticking out his tongue in disgust. Don't be a baby, chided the medi-healer. How are you feeling? Quinn exhaled a heavy sigh as he felt the potion doing its work. He already felt so much better. It is working. He looked up at Madame Pomfrey and saw the question in her eyes. I overpracticed and fainted on the floor. It surprised Quinn when Pomfrey told him about the depleted magical core. He hadn't checked on his magical core when he was in the vault chamber. I didn't use much magic inside the vault. What the hell inside happened while I was out, wondered Quinn. At least the last time he knew what happened, but this time he had no idea what took place. Pomfrey sighed before offering, do you want to sleep here today? Quinn shook his head and rejected the kind offer. No, it is all right. I would like to sleep in my own bed. He had no problem sleeping in the hospital wing, but this year, Quinn felt more comfortable inside the dorm because of the basilisk. She stared at Quinn for a moment before saying, all right, but come back here if you feel off about something. Quinn put his hands on his knees, propping himself up. The exhaustion was finally settling in. I will, thank you, Madame Pomfrey. Poppy Pomfrey saw of Quinn, looking at the tired back of the boy who was usually full of energy. The first thing Quinn did when he reached his dormitory room was to take a warm shower. He stayed under the shower tiredly thinking about the events today. Unlike the last vault, this vault was a complete mystery. There was nothing of note in the underground chamber. Or, there is something in that vault, but it is beyond my level. Something had happened to Quinn inside that vault, which meant there definitely was something inside that vault. His sudden unconsciousness and depleted magical core were solid proof of a type of magic in there. Quinn got out of the shower, deep in thought. The next course of action was different. I need to visit the vault chamber once again tomorrow, decided Quinn. As soon as Quinn decided to visit the second vault, a momentary flash of soft blue light illuminated a spot on Quinn's nape. The moment the blue appeared on his nape, his eyes blurred for a split second before Quinn spoke. Maybe, I will go sometime later. I don't have to hurry about the vault. Yes, that sounds great. Slow and steady wins the race. He yawned and looked towards his bed. I am exhausted. Oh Tilda, the bed looks really comfortable. I should go to sleep. He walked towards his bed and laid down on it. Yeah, this feels great. He curled up and made himself comfortable. With a smile on his face, he closed his eyes and sunk into a pleasant sleep. Another blue flash flickered on Quinn's nape before it faded away, leaving behind a sleeping Quinn. The entire school gathered on the Quidditch pitch at 11 o'clock on a Saturday. A game was scheduled between Gryffindor and Slytherin. Quidditch in Hogwarts was a big deal, with almost all of the student population gathering in the stands to watch the game. The games were such a big deal that the stadium had seats for outsiders to watch the game. Plus, this game was between Gryffindor and Slytherin, the most bitter rivalry in the history of Hogwarts. Quinn sat in the commentator's seat, a smile gracing his face. Flitwick had asked him to volunteer for the commentator's job, and he had readily accepted the request without even thinking about it. He turned to look at McGonagall and asked, "Can I start?" McGonagall looked at her wristwatch and then looked at the stadium seats and nodded, "Yes, the majority of the seats are filled. I think it is all right to start." Quinn grinned and turned to the microphone and turned it on. MIC check. Pop pop popsicles, ice ice icicles, test testing, 1, 2, 3, BA dum TSS. Quinn watched as his words turned heads all over the stands, and he grinned, "All right, I can see many heads turning, which means the microphone is working. We are live." He turned to face McGonagall and waggled his eyebrows. The Transfiguration professor just stared at Quinn, but her stern expression spoke loudly. Quinn turned back to the microphone and started. "Good morning, Hogwarts." He grabbed the microphone and continued. "Welcome to Hogwarts Quidditch. I am Quinn West and will be your commentator for the exciting game today. Before we start, this commentary was brought to you by the AID consultation service. Are you a Hogwarts student? Are you facing a problem? Come to our office on the 5th floor, and we will sort you out. AID is always happy and ready to help." He could feel McGonagall's eyes boring into his eyes, but Quinn continued nevertheless. Quinn looked up at the sky and commented. "Today seems to be a muggy sort of day with a hint of thunder in the sky, so there are chances it might rain during the game. Rainy day games aren't good because of low visibility. Let's hope that it doesn't rain." He took the chance to give a shout out, "My good friend Luna Lovegood hung Japanese Tarutaru Bozu dolls that are believed to ward off rain. The game today is an exciting one with the long-standing rivalry between the houses of Gryffindor and Slytherin. The two houses have pitted against each other on the field of Quidditch for centuries, vying for supremacy in the sport beloved by all of Hogwarts. The two teams entered the pitch, and Quinn veered the attention towards the players. The two teams have entered the pitch. Slytherin in green and Gryffindor in red. Both teams look like they are rearing to start the game. This game is going to be an exciting one with the Slytherin team riding on Nimbus 2001, the fastest professional brooms on the market. The 7 players each have a Nimbus 2001. Courtesy of Lucius Malfoy, but we can all say that it would have been better if he donated that money to upgrade the brooms that students use in flying classes. I am sure Madame Hooch would have been glad to work with some updated equipment, and Madame Pomfrey wouldn't have to grimace every time she looks at the brooms the students currently use. Believe me, it horrifies her that students ride on those arcane brooms. There were a lot of eyes from the stands. Old brooms didn't inspire motivation in anyone. All right, Slytherin is led by their captain Marcus Flint. This year, they have the new Seeker, the second year, Draco Malfoy. I won't say that this came to me as a surprise. If you know what I mean. Of course, you all know what I mean. Quinn stared at the Slytherin team and remarked, an all-male team, huh? Well, that is boring. Let's move on." A pink light flashed on Quinn's nape as he grinned. "Let's move on to the Gryffindor team. Now, the Gryffindor team is much more interesting. We have the 3 chasers, Alicia Spinnet, Angelina Johnson, and Katie Bell. Now, this is something we can work with. Mr. West." McGonagall's shout transmitted into the stands. All right, can I get a heck yeah from the crowd?" And Quinn did get a chant of heck yeah. A lot of boys yelled out their heck yeahs quite freely, appreciating Quinn's effort. Moving on, Gryffindor Captain Oliver Wood leads the team with tenacity and hard work. Sources say that he is a ferocious slave driver that lives for Quidditch. I have also heard that he has Professor McGonagall's permission and approval to be rough with the teammates. The back of Quinn's neck shone red as he proceeded. I guess Professor McGonagall's last game as a Gryffindor student against Slytherin, in which she crashed and burned into the stands, still haunts her dream. I would pay serious money for that memory. Ouch. Who shot me with a pinching hex? Laughter boomed across the stands, with Quinn's commentary entertaining everybody. Quinn rubbed his bum while glaring at McGonagall before returning to the microphone. Next, we have the twins. The Weasley twins rank number 1 on the Hogwarts twins rankings. I personally like the Potter twins more because they are really diametrically opposite to each other. Returning to the Weasley twins, they have the best coordination as a beta duo, but at the same time, they also have the highest number of fouls of sending the bludger into the stands. So everyone, please look out for stray bludgers coming out for your heads. Finally, we have the Gryffindor Seeker, Harry Potter. The second, or maybe the third most famous Potter in the castle. It depends on who you ask, but all of us know that Professor Potter is the number Potter in the castle, said Quinn while a pink light flashed on his nape. Now, Harry Potter rides a Nimbus 2000, which is the predecessor to the Slytherin house's Nimbus 2001. The key difference between 2000 and 2001 is the top speed. 2001 outspeeds 2000 by a tiny margin. But other than that, both versions have the same top acceleration, handling, turning radius, and braking capabilities. But top speed can be a crucial factor for professional level players, but here, versions 2000 and 2001 wouldn't be distinguishable on a performance basis. He looked at the Slytherin team and commented, but all 7 members of the Slytherin team equipped Nimbus 2001 will give them a great advantage. A yellow light flashed on Quinn's nape as he continued, damn, I should have opened a betting tab for the game. The money I could have earned. Maybe, next time. Mr. West, betting has no place in the honorable sport of Quidditch, berated McGonagall from his back. How about if I give good odds to the professors? How much are you talking? I mean, no. It is not allowed. All right, you know where to find me if you want to get in on the action. The game was about to start as Madame Hooch descended on the pitch on her broom. And the two teams lined in front of each other. A roar of cheers overflowed the stadium. Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff were anxious to see Slytherin beaten, but the Slytherins in the crowd made their boos and hisses heard, too. Madame Hooch, the Quidditch teacher, asked Flint and Wood to shake hands, which they did, giving each other threatening stares and gripping rather harder than was necessary. The game began when the 14 players and 1 referee rose up the leaden sky. Quinn also started his in-game commentary. Harry Potter has taken the high sky, higher than the rest of the other players, a standard strategy for snitch hunting. At that very moment, a heavy black bludger came pelting toward Harry, who avoided it with a very slim margin. The crowd sucked in their breaths at the close call. Oh boy, that was a close call. That bludger was about to give Potter an intense love hug. George Weasley streaks towards the bludger, but what is this? The bludger avoids him and once again rushes towards Potter. Oh! What a close call, that bludger almost took out Potter's head. Seeing this, Quinn thought that Dobby was also part of this timeline, as the rogue bludger that was continuously targeting Harry Potter was charmed by Dobby to do so. But, while Quinn was in deep thought, a blue light appeared on his nape, and suddenly Quinn dropped his line of thought about Dobby. I will think about Dobby later. This game is much more fun than thinking about Dobby. Looks like the Gryffindor team has called a timeout. Maybe it is to discuss the bludger that is particularly matey towards their seeker. Quinn continued to diligently provide commentary. Quinn looked at the sky and spoke, looks like the weather is not on our side. It has started to rain. Please, make sure to cover yourself to avoid getting wet and risk catching a cold. The Gryffindor team ended their timeout without stopping the match to check out the bludger and continued the game in the increasingly pouring rain. And, the moment the game continued, the bludger whistled towards Harry Potter like a homing missile. Harry flew expertly, avoiding the bludger narrowly every time. Finally, Harry had spotted the golden snitch, but while he caught it, the bludger rammed into his shoulder hard. Quinn winced, thinking about the shattered bones. Oh boy, that will surely hurt a lot later. Wait. Harry Potter has caught the snitch. The Golden Seeker has caught the golden snitch. The game is over. Gryffindor, against the clear equipment deficit, has defeated Slytherin and has clinched the victory from their mouths. Oliver Wood and his team have done it. Gryffindor is victorious. Another flash of blue graced his nape, and Quinn lost all his energy. He sat down on his seat and felt a little tired from all the talking he did. "This was more tiring than I thought," said Quinn, not knowing that something was happening to him. Chapter 55, Engraving Tool and Dueling Club. Quinn stood in his workshop, working on a new piece of equipment. He had worked hard to get this piece of equipment and had kind of risked his life while obtaining it. In front of him sat a thin black rectangular case on a table in his workshop. He gazed at the black case, and it unlocked with a click. The case's lid rose up and moved aside, revealing behind a thin golden cylinder with a 4 mm diameter and a length of 12 centimeters. The thin golden cylinder was the same cylinder that super chilled using the cold energy from absolute zero. Quinn didn't touch the box or the gold cylinder because they were intensely cold. He glanced at the spot on the table beyond the black case, and there sat a hexagonal metal cylinder with a conical tip on one end. In simpler words, it was in the shape of a pencil. The metallic pencil rose from the table and flew into Quinn's hand. The metallic pencil was made from vanadium and steel alloy. He moved the metallic pencil closer to his face and saw the faint runic markings all over the pencil's surface. He turned it to the non-conical side to reveal a cylindrical hole in the pencil. This was the place where the chilled gold cylinder was going to fit. The metallic pencil was a runic tool that used a super-chilled magic conductor as its core to channel magic into the runes etched into the metal. The metallic pencil floated in his hand, and his other hand veered his hand towards the gold cylinder and used his magic to lift it off the case. Quinn could feel his magic react to the cold, and it was slightly more difficult to control, but to Quinn, it was nothing as he had operated his magic on a super-chilled block of ice for months. The hexagonal metallic pencil and the gold cylindrical core lined with each other, and with a move of magic, the gold cylindrical core slipped inside the metallic pencil. The opening immediately closed when the gold cylinder was fully inserted into the metal. Quinn gently channeled magic into the metallic pencil, and immediately, all the runic markings on the surface glowed with white, and the tip of the metallic pencil also turned white. "Excellent," grinned Quinn. The back of his nape shone in violet color. Quinn felt extremely proud of the magical tool floating over his hands. He genuinely thought that this was the best thing that came out of this room in the entire 1,000-year history of Hogwarts. "All right, let's go and test this out." Quinn spoke and cleared out the black case from the table and brought out a thin circular metal disc of the size of a coaster. Placing the thin metallic disc on the table, Quinn stuck it to the table with a sticking charm. "Okay, testing the new concentrated magic engraving tool for shallow rune engraving," commented Quinn while he put on his leather apron, leather gloves, and safety goggles. Quinn's metallic pencil engraving tool floated above the metal disc, and with a thrum of Quinn's magic, the rune marking light up in white, and the tip shone brighter than any rune on the metal. The metal engraver lowered down to the metal disc, and the white tip contacted the metal. There was a trill as Quinn used magic to draw runes on the metal disc, carefully sliding the glowing tip over the disc to mark runes over the metal. The glow on the runes and tip changed as Quinn dynamically altered the flow of magic as per the requirement. It took a few minutes before the entire surface of the metal disc was marked with very shallow runes. The runes on the engraver dimmed as Quinn stopped supplying magic to the gold core inside the metal body. Quinn vanished the fumes created because of the engraving before pulling the engraver closer to him. He released the gold core from the body and observed its condition after a session of rune engraving. At this rate, it will last for another, maybe 10 sessions before I need to recharge the cold energy from absolute zero, noted Quinn as he attentively examined the thin gold cylindrical core. The core floated to the side and took its place back inside the black case as Quinn moved towards the engraved metal disc. Shallow engravings of less than a millimeter, less than or equal to 0.9 millimeters, depth covered the entire metal surface. "Oh yeah, now this is precision art," Quinn admired the runic marking engraved by the rune engraver. The results were as stunning as Quinn expected. Runes were all about the material used and the shape of the runes that were drawn. The more accurate the constructs, the better the runes would perform their tasks. Before today, Quinn had been using transmutation to engrave runes on solid surfaces like wood and metals, but there was a slight problem with that method, and it was precision. Quinn could successfully mark runes into the solids, but they were not the best engravings as Quinn struggled with dimensions. He couldn't make engravings that had a depth of less than 2 to 3 mm, 2 to 3 mm, with transmutation because that level of precision was out of his current mastery level. Some runes needed to be of depths less than that amount, and unless Quinn could improve his mastery, those runes would work, but not as effectively as Quinn wanted them to. But, with the rune engraver, Quinn could overcome the problem until he could improve his mastery over transmutation. He picked up the metal disc into a wooden frame and fitted a glass dome over the wooden frame to cover the metal disc. Quinn set everything in their place with sticking charms. Quinn looked up at the ceiling chandelier, and all the candles extinguished with a gust of wind. The room went dark with no light source. Light from the table bathed the room with white as Quinn's newly engraved metallic disc performed its function. It was a rune cluster that produced an orb of light above the metal disc, providing light like a standard light bulb. Quinn looked around and finally saw how everything in his workshop looked like in white light instead of the yellow light of the candles. Yeah, white light is better than yellow light. Much better. Quinn picked up the magical light bulb and moved around the room to shine a light on everything. 3 more for the workshop and 2 for the office would be enough. He stared at the magical light bulb with a proud smile on his face. The violet on his nape bloomed and thrummed with activity. Colin Creevy had been attacked and was now lying in the hospital wing as though dead. Such news had spread through the entire school. The air was suddenly thick with rumor and suspicion. The first years were now moving around the castle in tight-knit groups, as though scared they would be attacked if they ventured forth alone. Before, Mrs. Norris was petrified, so no one really cared about the event as the victim was a cat, but this time the victim was a student, and with the rumor mill, the teenage minds believed whatever was fed to them. And, amongst all this tension, the school announced an event that excited all students in Hogwarts. Quinn, Eddie, and Marcus stood in front of the notice board in front of the entrance hall. A small knot of people stood with them, who were similarly reading a piece of parchment pinned on the board. "They're starting a dueling club," said Marcus. "First meeting tonight. I wouldn't mind dueling lessons, they might come in handy one of these days." "What, you reckon Slytherin's monster can duel?" joked Eddie, but he, too, read the sign with interest. "Could be useful," Quinn said to Eddie and Marcus as they walked to the great hall for dinner. "At the very least, it would be fun. Let's drop by tonight." Eddie and Marcus were all for it. So, at 9 o'clock that evening, 3 pals hurried back to the great hall. The long dining tables had vanished, and a circular stage had in the middle of the hall, lit by thousands of candles floating overhead. The ceiling was velvety black once more, and most of the school seemed to be packed beneath it, all carrying their wands and looking excited. It surprised Quinn to see a circular stage instead of the long straight one like in the series. "I wonder who'll be teaching us," said Marcus as they edged into the chattering crowd. "It will be Flitwick, of course. He was a dueling champion, who better than him," replied Eddie. Quinn grinned as he nudged them to look at the stage. "At least one of you is right," Quinn spoke, but it surprised him as well because Phileas Flitwick accompanied Gilderoy Lockhart instead of Snape in the canon Snape and Lockhart pairing. Lockhart waved an arm for silence and called, "Gather round, gather round. Can everyone see me? Can you all hear me? Excellent. Now, Professor Dumbledore has granted me permission to start this little dueling club, to train you all in case you ever need to defend yourselves as I myself have done on countless occasions. For full details, see my published works. Let me introduce my assistant, Professor Flitwick," said Lockhart, flashing a wide smile. "He tells me he knows a tiny little bit about dueling himself, and has sportingly agreed to help me with a short demonstration before we begin. Now, I don't want any of you, youngsters, to worry, you'll still have your charms master when I'm through with him, never fear." Flitwick's lip was curled into an almost feral smile in response. Quinn cackled and repeatedly slapped Eddie on his shoulder. "Lockhart is an idiot." Eddie and Marcus actually felt second-hand embarrassment because of Lockhart. Lockhart and Flitwick turned to face each other and bowed, at least, Lockhart did, with much twirling of his hands, whereas Flitwick simply nodded. Then they raised their wands like swords in front of them. "As you see, we are holding our wands in the accepted combative position," Lockhart told the silent crowd. "On the count of 3, we will cast our first spells. Neither of us will aim to kill, of course. 1, 2, 3 dash." Both of them swung their wands above their heads and pointed them at their opponent. Flitwick cried, "Stupefy!" There was a dazzling flash of scarlet light, and the next second, Lockhart crumpled into a heap on the floor. Quinn could see Malfoy and his gang of Slytherin cheered. Many girls gasped and squealed their fingers. Flitwick turned to look at the crowd of students and spoke, "Looks like Professor Lockhart would be out of commission for a while, so I will be taking over this lesson." Flitwick swung his wand, and Lockhart's clothes tugged upward and dragged him off the stage to a corner of the Great Hall. "The charm I used was a stunning charm, as you saw, it stunned Professor Lockhart unconscious. Now, I think you saw sufficient demonstration. Does anyone like to volunteer?" Flitwick turned around to look at the entire crowd and didn't see any hands rising. Maybe it was because they just saw Flitwick stun Lockhart, or because no one wanted to go first. Quinn also looked around to see if anyone would volunteer when he felt his shoulders being grabbed. He looked to his sides to see Eddie and Marcus smiling, and then they pushed him forward. "Whoa! You gauntless little pieces of naffers," cursed Quinn as he stumbled to the front of the crowd. Flitwick's eyes shined as he excitedly clapped in bony hands. "Looks like Mr. West wants to take part, excellent. 10 points to Ravenclaw. Come on up." Quinn sighed before shaking his head with a smile. He removed his robes and turned back to throw them at Eddie. "You two better not come up there because I will make your lives miserable." Glaring at his two friends as they stuck out their tongues at him. The crowd cheered when Quinn removed his robes and climbed up onto the stage while loosening his necktie. He raised his hand to the crowd with a chill smile on his face. "Now, who will be the other one?" Flitwick twirled around his spot. "Students, don't be shy, and please step up." Quinn was absent-mindedly playing with his fake wand when he heard the Slytherin cheer up. He turned in their direction to find a Slytherin student climb upstairs to the stage. Miles Bletchley, 4th year. Quinn tilted his head as he identified the Slytherin student. "Slytherin Quidditch team, a mean-spirited individual who lacked good sportsmanship. He takes enjoyment in mocking others and likes to play rough." Did he come up because he thinks he can win this fight?" The red light took root on his nape as Quinn felt disrespected. He could see the slight smirk on Miles Bletchley's face, which made Quinn feel angry. Flitwick grinned in delight as he motioned his two participants to face each other. "Face your partners," called Flitwick, back on the platform. "And bow." Neither of the two duelers bowed to each other and just stared at the other. Bletchley smirked at Quinn, while Quinn didn't smile or anything and just stared back. "Wands at the ready," shouted Flitwick. "When I count to 3, cast your charms to disarm your opponents, only to disarm them. We don't want any accidents. 1, 2, 3. Go!" Quinn didn't bother raising his wand high and just stared at Bletchley. On the other hand, Bletchley moved immediately and casted a curse, and it was not the disarming charm. Furnunculus. The Furnunculus curse caused the target to erupt in painful boils or pimples. If you had mastery over the curse, then the boils could be pretty painful and continuously ooze with pus. A gold flash of spell light zapped toward Quinn, who simply sidestepped to avoid the curse. Bletchley clicked his tongue and casted one more curse. Calvorio, a dark curse that removed all hair from the curse's victim. Quinn ducked and let the spell pass him. "All right, if this is how he wants to play," thought Quinn and walked towards Bletchley. Bletchley frowned and cursed another charm. Locomotor Mortis. A curse that is used to bind the legs of the victim together. Quinn hopped to let the curse hit the floor. Bletchley growled as he saw a mocking grin on Quinn's face. "Stupefy!" Bletchley roared in frustration. A jet of red coursed through the air aimed right at Quinn's face. Quinn tilted his head with a smirk, and the red jet whistled past him. Bletchley stood stunned at yet another dodge and was startled when he saw Quinn running towards him. He raised his wand and tried to cast a charm, but in his agitated state, he wasn't able to decide on a spell. Quinn stopped right in front of Bletchley, winked at his opponent, and snatched Bletchley's wand straight from his hand and chucked it over his head into the crowd. "Oh, nice try. Those were some serious nasty curses, you know? If one of those hit me, that would have been bad." Quinn tapped Bletchley's face with the back of his hand. "Better luck next time." The red glow on his nape turned violet as he turned his back to Bletchley and pumped his hand in the air. "That's how you do it." The crowd, which was silent while watching the duel, erupted in cheers and applauses for Quinn. To watch a person dodging every spell and win without using magic in the manner Quinn did was exciting to see. Quinn put his fake wand on the side of his neck, and it amplified his voice for all to hear. "All right, who is next? Let's get this party started." Flitwick, who was watching from the side, just beamed and walked off the stage. He was surprised that Quinn didn't cast a single spell, but he was amused by the effortless dodging. Looking at the crowd's mood, he decided it would be a waste to remove Quinn from the stage. No time was wasted as one of the Weasley twins stepped on the stage and the Gryffindor students cheered for him. "Take the bird brain down. Gryffindor rules." Quinn spread his arms and smiled towards the Weasley twin. Before we start, which one are you?" The Weasley laughed before speaking. "I am Fred, or maybe I am George. Or maybe I am Forge, or neither of them and am Gred." Quinn nodded with a tilt and laughed. True, what is in a name? "Let's start, shall we?" Both nodded and readied their wands. From below the stage, Flitwick counted them off. 1, 2, 3, go. This time Quinn moved first and swiftly took a step forward while kneeling down on one knee to shoot a conjured rope towards Fred's George's legs. The sudden spell took the twin by surprise, and the rope wrapped around his legs, sealing any movement from his lower body and also messing up his balance. Quinn grinned and waved his wand. Suddenly, the rope around Fred George's legs rose up into the air with its captive in the tow. "Whoa!" shouted Fred George as he found himself being lifted into the air, upside down at that. Quinn let the Weasley hang in the air for a bit before levitating the rope so that Fred George moved towards the Gryffindor crowd and lowered him close to the ground before releasing the rope spell, letting Weasley fall onto the floor. Everyone, including a lot of Gryffindor students, cheered for Quinn at yet another win. The victor raised both his hands and prompting the crowd to cheer more loudly. Quinn laughed in delight as he bathed in the cheers. The violet on his nape deepened in color and turned vivid and dark. Inside his body, Quinn's magic sang with power and vibrated with activity. Quinn felt his magic's presence much clearer than ever before. He closed his eyes and felt his connection with his magic deepen in real time. The feeling was exhilarating, lifting his already good mood even better. "This feels so good." The patch of violet on Quinn's nape had gained another level of depth as Quinn felt the change in his magic. Not for a second did the thought of why his magic was reacting the way it did cross Quinn's mind. His mind was too distracted by the stimulation his magic was providing right now. Quinn's magic was changing. Chapter 56, Quinn vs. Tracy, Parseltongue, and Gossip. The change in his magic brought immense pleasure and delight to Quinn as he found his mood uplifted and a skip accompanying his step. Quinn looked around the crowd to see if anyone wanted to be his next opponent. And his eyes met with those of Tracy. He smiled and beckoned his Slytherin friend with his hands. The gesture surprised the brunette Slytherin as she shook her head side to side, but Quinn relayed everything would be okay with his eyes, and it was okay to come up. Tracy hesitated if she wanted to go up to the stage, and after some thinking, decided to go up. She stepped forward and directly climbed the steps to the stage. There was a lot of booing from the other three houses because of Tracy's status as a Slytherin. The harsh boos affected Tracy, and she did her best not to show that it affected her. But if you looked closely, you could see the slight slump in her gait. "Ignore the other, and let's have some fun, Tracy." It startled Tracy to hear Quinn's voice so close to her. It was like that he was directly whispering into her ear, but when she looked up, Quinn was standing a distance from her, showing a comforting smile, and when their eyes met, Quinn gave her a quick wink. "You called me Tracy," she spoke in utter surprise. After an entire year of Mrs. Davis and Davis, she finally heard Quinn call her by her given name. Tracy's words made Quinn realize he had called the girl by her first name, and it was quite a surprise to himself as well. Tracy saw Quinn's lips move and once again heard his voice like he was standing right beside her. "Yes, I did. It looks like I will be calling you by Tracy from now on. You are the first one, you know? The first one I called by their first name. Ha ha ha, be honored, little girl." Tracy's eyes sparkled with delight at being first, and she couldn't feel any negativity from the boos of the crowd. She took out her wand with confidence and aimed it at Quinn, following Quinn's lead. "Remember, cast a disarming spell, Expelliarmus." Tracy nodded, hearing Quinn's explanation, directly delivered to her ears and no one else's. 1, 2, 3, go. The second Flitwick yelled go. Tracy moved first and cast a disarming spell. Expelliarmus! An impulse of scarlet magic burst out of her wand and buzzed towards Quinn. Quinn also pointed his fake wand and whispered Expelliarmus in the likely event anyone was listening and countered with his own scarlet burst of spell light. The two spells made contact in between the two casters and cancelled each other out. Quinn grinned and again cast a disarming spell towards Tracy. Tracy, who now was feeling confident, and countered with her own disarming spell. The crowd oohed and ahed when they saw the two spells collided with each other. Once again, they cancelled each other, giving the crowd the show they wanted. Tracy was back in her element and showed her taking charge personality and shot a stream of disarming spell light which hurled towards Quinn. Now we are taking, laughed Quinn as he shot out a stream of the same spell towards Tracy's. The two red jets of magic met in the middle, colliding with each other, fighting for dominance. It entranced the younger students when they saw the continuous jets of magic meeting each other. Tracy held her wands with both her hands when she felt Quinn's magic overpowering her and tried to channel magic into her wand, trying to push back. But the struggle was futile as Quinn's magic continued to overpower hers, and Quinn's spell light moved closer and closer to hers. The Slytherin students in the crowd cheered for their representative. Quinn had humiliated the last one, but she stood steadfast against Quinn, which had redeemed the House of Slytherin. Quinn calmly smiled as he inserted a burst of magic into the spell and overpowered Tracy's magic in one fell swoop, forcing Tracy's hand open and driving her wand out it, disarming her in the process. The wand wheeled in the air before it landed in Quinn's hand, who caught it with a cheeky smile on his face. I won, he laughed, walking towards Tracy, handing her the wand back. Good duel? Tracy held her wand back in her hands and grinned her usual bubbly smile. Good duel. Great, he smiled before turning to look at Flitwick and gestured that he was done for today. Flitwick picked up the gesture and climbed up to the stage while Quinn and Tracy took the other set of steps to get down. Tracy and Quinn parted their ways, and Tracy ran to Daphne and got looks of approval from many Slytherin students. Are you okay? Asked Daphne, worried about her friend. He didn't overdo it, did he? Tracy swayed on her spot with her hands behind her back and grinned a boastful smile. He called me Tracy. Daphne tilted her head in confusion and asked, what? Quinn called me Tracy, she repeated, waiting for the news to sink in her friend's pretty head. What else would he call Dash? Daphne began speaking, but mid-sentence realization struck her, and she stopped. He called you Tracy? Tracy giggled and bumped Daphne's shoulder with hers. He said I was the first one he called by their first name. He. The blonde turned her blue eyes to look at the Ravenclaw in question and saw him putting his robes back on, laughing with his friends and housemates. She felt a hand on her shoulder and looked back to see Tracy gazing at her with an encouraging expression. Don't worry, he will call you by your given name soon. Daphne stared at her best friend and spoke in a flat voice, I couldn't care less. Tracy waggled her eyebrows, opting not to say anything, but gave a sure you do look to her best friend. It was like someone pasted a permanent smile on Quinn's face, causing him to beam like the happiest person in the world. He was experiencing something like a euphoric high. The change in his magic was becoming more pronounced to Quinn when he took a moment to feel it, and could sense the enchanting feel of his magic under his control better than ever. He just wanted to let his magic loose and cast a massive freeze wave in the Great Hall or transfiguring the floor to change the terrain of the hall. Anything would do as long as it would allow him to flex his magical capabilities, but he held back and looked at the stage, watching the duels. His interest deepened when he saw Harry Potter climb up the stage with a swagger in his step and confidence in his gait. The boy who lived looked comfortable on the big stage and under the gaze of the majority of the student population. Harry walked near the Slytherin side and pointed at Draco, hooking his index finger to beckon his rival, to come up to the stage to duel him. You won't be a no-show like that last time, would you, Malfoy? Because last year was an utter disappointment. Let's have the duel you so much wanted, said the boy who lived, speaking so that everyone could hear him. Draco's face heated up with anger as he growled, Potter. The blonde Malfoy stepped onto the stage, stepping up to face Harry Potter in a duel. Both second-year students faced each other on the circular stage and looked at each other with their chins raised slightly, not bothering to bow to each other. Flitwick looked side to side at Harry and Draco and didn't bother telling them to use disarming spells. From the looks the two gave each other, it didn't look like they would listen to him. The half-goblin wasn't actually worried about the spells the two would use against each other. If they got injured, that would only serve as a lesson to them that the spells were dangerous. 1, 2, 3, go! Harry swung his wand high, but Malfoy had already started on 2. His spell hit Harry so hard that Harry felt as though someone had hit him over the head with a saucepan. He stumbled, but everything still seemed to work, and wasting no more time, Harry pointed his wand straight at Malfoy and shouted, "Ricta Sempra!" A jet of silver light hit Malfoy in the stomach, and he doubled up, wheezing with laughter. Harry had hit him with a tickling charm, and he could barely move for laughing. Malfoy pointed his wand at Harry's knees, choked, "Tarantallegra!" And the next second, Harry's legs jerked around out of his control in a kind of quickstep. It was the spell that made a target's legs spasm wildly out of control, making it appear as though they were dancing. Harry was startled but cast a finite on his knees, stopping them from spasming. Draco, on the other side, did the same to make himself stop laughing. Below the stage, Quinn, with his arms crossed, observed the duel and thought, "I would have obliterated both of them together multiple times by now." "Serpent Sorcerer!" bellowed Draco, and Quinn watched as the end of Draco's wand exploded with light as a long black snake shot out of it, fell heavily onto the floor between them, and raised itself, ready to strike. "It is happening," thought Quinn, stepping a step forward while everybody stepped back in fear. Harry brandished his wand at the snake, and there was a loud bang. The snake was pushed back with force. Enraged, hissing furiously, it slithered straight toward Justin Finch-Fletchley, who was standing a bit too close to the stage, and raised itself again, fangs exposed, poised to strike. Quinn wasn't looking at the snake of Justin Finch-Fletchley and trained his eyes on Harry Potter. Quinn's eyes opened a fraction when he saw Harry walk towards the snake. A green shade bloomed on Quinn's nape as he heard the boy who lived hiss as the snake and saw miraculously, inexplicably, the snake slumped to the floor, docile as a thick, black garden hose, its eyes now on Harry. "Parseltongue, the language of serpents," spoke Quinn, not knowing that everyone around him heard him. Quinn's words brought them out of their fear and set a fire of murmurs across the students. Everybody had one thought in their heads: is Harry Potter the heir of Slytherin? Quinn didn't have thoughts like that. He just stared at Harry with an envious gaze. Harry Potter had a magical ability that he didn't have. The ability to communicate and command another species to a degree was always a plus point. It was an uncommon skill and was known to be an almost exclusively hereditary trait. Quinn was jealous that he did not have the ability to speak Parseltongue. Neither did he know if it was possible to learn Parseltongue. He had heard the lore that Dumbledore could speak it, but Quinn wasn't sure if it was true. He had been to India, and the Parselmouths there told him it was something you were born with. The green patch deepened with Quinn's emotions, planting its roots in Quinn, but it stopped when Quinn heard a screech from the snake that burned into the nothingness from a spell from Flitwick. The charms professor had lost the excited smile he had on his face and had an urgent look on his face and a suspicious look in his eyes, as he looked at Harry. Suddenly, Ivy ran up to the stage and pulled on Harry's robes, dragging her twin off the stage. Ron Weasley shoved the students aside, making way for the Golden Squad so that they could leave the Great Hall and the suspicious eyes that bore into the back of Harry. Quinn groaned as he woke up in the morning and sat in his bed. He didn't want to get up from his bed and contemplated skipping his morning run. Yesterday, he had gotten excited about his new magical improvement, and had run an obstacle course full of moving targets and dummies placed around an irregular terrain. He had run laps around the course while shooting magic heavy spells while running, jumping, and doing all kinds of physical exertion. He rolled in his bed for a while before noticing something. The sleepy boy looked towards his legs and felt something peculiar. He lifted his sheet to what was inside. There was a tent standing in his pant. Quinn watched it with an intrigued look on his face. Heh? Quinn stared at the tent, and the tent, well, didn't stare back, but stayed tent-like. A pink hue developed on Quinn's nape as he looked at the tent, and thoughts appeared in his mind. Minute changes took place in Quinn's magic happened as the pink shade stayed on Quinn's nape. "All right," Quinn smiled, hopped off his bed, and walked to the bathroom. He looked at his right hand and smirked. "I am counting on you, buddy." Let's go and have a good time. For the next few days, the major topic of conversation in Hogwarts was how Harry Potter was the heir of Slytherin, and he was out for all Muggleborns in the castle. Sitting in the library, Quinn could hear the conversation of a group of the Hufflepuff who should have been in herbology classes. But because of the heavy snow outside, they cancelled the classes. He could see that their heads were close together, and they were having what looked like an absorbing conversation. So anyway, a stout boy was saying, "I told Justin to hide up in our dormitory. I mean to say, if Potter's marked him down as his next victim, it's best if he keeps a low profile for a while." Of course, Justin has been waiting for something like this to happen ever since he let it slip to Potter that he was a Muggle born. That's not the kind of thing you band about with Slytherin's heir on the loose, is it? You definitely think it is Potter, then, Ernie, said a girl with blonde pigtails, anxiously. Hannah, said the stout boy solemnly, he is a parcel mouth. Everyone knows that is the mark of a dark wizard. Have you ever heard of a decent one who could talk to snakes? They called Slytherin himself Serpent Tongue. There was some heavy murmuring at this, and Ernie went on, remember what was written on the wall? Enemies of the heir, beware. Potter had some sort of run-in with Filch. Next thing we know, Filch's cats attacked. That first year, Creevy was annoying Potter at the Quidditch match, taking pictures of him while lying in the mud. Next thing we know, Creevy's been attacked. Does this mean that Potter would go after Professor Potter, said Hannah Abbott uncertainly, she is a Muggle-born as well. A pitiful look appeared on her face, Professor Potter seems so nice. Now, she will become his target. Ernie lowered his voice mysteriously. The Hufflepuffs bent closer and Quinn balanced his chair on its back 2 legs to get nearer so that he could catch Ernie's words. No one knows how he survived that attack by you-know-who. I mean to say, he was only a baby when it happened. He should have been blasted into smithereens. Only a powerful dark wizard could have survived a curse like that. He dropped his voice until it was barely more than a whisper and said, that probably is why you-know-who wanted to kill him in the first place. Didn't want another Dark Lord competing with him. I wonder what other things Potter's been hiding. Then suddenly, the person in question barged in and slapped his hands on the question and leaned on it as he peered at the group of Hufflepuffs. All right, dumb tweaks. I am looking for Finch Fletchley, where is he? The Hufflepuffs' worst fears had clearly been confirmed. They all looked fearfully at Ernie. What do you want with him? Asked Ernie in a quavering voice. He has been running his trap about me being the heir of Slytherin, Harry sneered and continued. I need to get it inside his head that I was just trying to help him. Ernie bit his white lips and then, taking a deep breath, said, we were all there. We saw what happened. Then you all saw that the bloody snake backed off when I spoke to it. Harry made hissing noises at the group and continued, or, are you guy blind as well? All I saw, said Ernie stubbornly, though he was trembling as he spoke, was you speaking Parseltongue and chasing the snake toward Justin. I didn't chase it at him. Harry said, his voice shaking with anger. It didn't even touch him. It was a very near miss, said Ernie. And in case you're getting ideas, he added hastily, I might tell you that you can trace my family back through 9 generations of witches and warlocks, and my blood's as pure as anyone's, so dash. Harry kicked the leg of the table and yelled, I don't give rat's about what sort of blood you have got. Ugh. He turned on his heel and stormed out of the library, earning himself a reproving glare from Madame Pince, who was polishing the gilded cover of a large spell book. Oh boy, he made it much worse, thought Quinn looking at the Hufflepuff group, look how scared they are. He hissed at them for Merlin's sake. He shook his head and sighed, this Harry Potter isn't good at damage control. Boy, this is going to blow up, goody. A smirk surfaced on Quinn's face as a grin appeared on his neck, deepening by the second, changing Quinn's magic. This marks the end of part 14 of the story, Magical Journey in Harry Potter World. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.